And you've just heard Sugar Honey, the title track from Carla J Easton's new album. And I'm delighted to be joined by Carla now. Hello.
Hello.
So how do you describe the album to people? Like, how do you think about it yourself?
I would say my last album was face melting maximalist synths, or that's what people used to refer to it as. Whereas this one's a bit more organic, perhaps, like organic. There's a lot of space within the tracks. Of course, there's a lot of synths, but it's maybe bringing back in some instrumentation that had been in Impossible stuff like strings. I just really love strings. A couple more different collaborators widened the circle a bit. And it's also my first time self-producing. So if anything, it's the result of a process, this album, you know, and it's been quite interesting going into rehearsals because that's now translating into a live experience. So it feels like you're letting it grow even further, which is quite nice.
So is this you kind of taking all your experiences to date and applying it to these songs?
Yeah, and just kind of, I think over the last few years, getting involved in Henhouse, which is really great, a collective of women and non-binary songwriters and producers, and we did everything ourselves in the creation of that music. And then the Poster Paints album being recorded remotely at home, there was sort of conversations I was having with friends like Malka about, you know, will we produce our own demos all the time? You know, and so what if you take that same attitude into the studio and just have fun playing about with things? So, I mean, this album, I always say it's my most uncool album to date. It just gives, it doesn't care about being relevant or current. It's just a love of songwriting, a love of pop in all its many forms. And yeah, there's loads of synths on it, but it was really important to me that they were all played by human rather than like us programming them all in this time. Like I just really wanted to have a sort of warm sounding, organic synth alt pop thing. It's really hard describing your own music. I mean, and again, there's like different genres within the genre of pop that I've probably touched on. But yeah, all the songs were written over the last, I think between 2020 and 2022. I actually had quite a lot of songs and then sort of whittled it down to this collection of 11 that I thought went well together.
And do your albums reflect what you're listening to at the time of recording, or what you've always listened to, or a bit of both? Because it does seem to me that musically, as you've just mentioned, each of your albums, there's a kind of musical theme that you could loosely describe in the way you've described it.
Yeah, I don't know. I often wonder that. I think there's always an element of your, as a songwriter and musician, and probably soaking up influences all the time, sometimes without realizing it. Like I got really into Beverly Glenn Copeland over the last couple of years, and his synth arrangements. I mean, they're all just recorded on the DX7, but they're the most beautiful recordings you've ever heard in your life. But similarly, listening a lot to like Mary Margaret O'Hara, a band called Wet, and then deep diving into some new songwriters that are like new old songwriters, like Barbara Lynn. I got really obsessed with her at one point. Obviously, everyone in the last few years went through their Taylor Swift phase. You know, and so I guess because I just listen to everything, a bit of everything, perhaps it all feeds in. I guess I'm just a fan of songs. I'm a fan of songwriting. And like, you know, some of the songs, I allowed myself the time to work at them and tinker away at them. So like Never Belong, the album opener, sorry, I wrote that in 2020, the first initial idea for it, but I didn't come back to it again until like 2021 to like really refine and really think about each lyric with every song this time.
I was wondering about how you approach your songwriting. Is there an initial spark and then you kind of work over it a period of time, or do they sometimes come almost fully formed to you?
I mean, everyone always talks about when you get a fully formed song arriving at once, like it's great. That's the ideal scenario, but I don't think we can sit back and just wait for the muse to appear whenever it wants to. Like sometimes you've got to go and find it. So stuff like Sugar Honey, like that pretty much came fully formed. I was just walking home from the subway one night and it was dark and I was just like singing to myself, just to sort of keep myself company. It's a very unlit part of town. There's not much around, and normally I would listen to my headphones, but I don't at night because I'm wanting to be aware of like sounds going on around me. And that kind of came fully formed. And there'll be little things like the song on the album called Every Little Bit of My Heart. That was actually like I found a hard drive with voice notes on it from 2011 to 2014. So there's a lot of unheard Teen Canteen rehearsals in that collection. And there's maybe like 300 voice notes just from my phone. And there was one where it's just me bashing away at the piano, making no sense at all. And then this chorus just came out of nowhere and then disappeared. And I was like, why did I not explore that further? So then picked that back up again. And Sleepyhead was a co-write with my friend Kim Ritchie in Nashville. And the good thing about co-writing is songs can arrive via conversation and discussion.
Yeah.
Which is also quite nice. So then that feeds the inspiration, or it could be something that I've read or something that I've listened to. I was listening to the New Yorker Poetry podcast an awful lot. And I think I was listening to it in the bath one night and a line came out and I was like, oh my God. And that almost became the starting theme for the song that would become Cherry Tree Out Front, which then got really ferociously written.
Right.
Without thought almost, but it just been someone commenting about the body wasting away and the situation I was in with my mum, having gone through some strokes and the fear of her declining further. And it just came out in one pretty much.
That's really interesting because I was talking to the poet Don Patterson and he was saying that he thinks poets work in a different way to other artists. Like the poetry, almost as you say, can come to you and it comes when it comes. Mm-hmm. Whereas he was particularly having a go at Neville, if having a go is the right thing, that they could do a working day, like a 9 to 5 or a 9 to 12, as he said, knock off and go and do something else. But what you're describing is more like the poetry, that the inspiration at least can come to you at any time.
Yeah, and I think that's more with, well, it can be with lyrics or it can be with melody. Like sometimes I'll just be like, you know what, I'm going to set up my synth, some audio interface and just explore, and I'll start with like a drum beat, and rhythm always seems to be a key sort of instigator for me, like whether that's the rhythm of someone speaking and automatically that gives me a tempo and a beat and I start and fill it in with a melody or words, or walking, like the rhythm of walking can spring up like a melody in me, or a sort of repetition of how words would sound kind of thing.
And it seems to me that your songs take the personal and then become kind of universal through relatability. Is that something that you think the best songs do anyway, or is it something that you're aware of and kind of work towards?
Again, it was like, so I met Kim Ritchie on a writing residency 6 years ago, and then during the making of this album I was actually on 2 more digital writing residencies, and we were talking a lot about what's your role as the songwriter, and there was always something Kim said that just stuck with me ever since, and it's like, it's your responsibility as a songwriter to give voice to people who can't do it, as in like, you know, you could write a song and it can be from my point of view, but the listener can hear it and go, God, that's exactly what I've been trying to say about this thing for so long. And I don't know, I think a lot of the great songwriters had that ability where you can write something universal from the personal, you know?
I think that's what the best art does across the board. You know, you think you didn't realize that you thought it till someone else voices it for you almost. Mm-hmm. And you said to me earlier on that you've been doing some lecturing and teaching of songwriting courses, and now you say you've been to ones yourself. Do they all feed into what you end up doing next, and do they feed into your work?
I think it always sparks ideas. What I really enjoy about like lecturing, and also I'm working with some teenagers at Rig Arts at the moment, is it's good to remember why you love doing something. So it's good to be in conversations with people who just love writing, you know, and I'm a big believer in there's not a right or a wrong way to write a song. Yeah. There's whatever works for you, you know, and we can talk a lot about structure in songs like A, B, whatever. But, you know, sometimes it's like if the song doesn't want to do that, then the song's not going to do that. And that's fine, you know. But it's just always great to be around people. And it's interesting when people are just at the start of their songwriting journey, because they've almost there's no cynicism. They've not worked out all their own patterns and that they fall into. So it's quite inspiring. Like off the back of that, of working with the kids at Rigarts, I started learning guitar, and actually the limitation in chords that I know has been really fulfilling in terms of what I'm writing now, because it almost feels like going back to the start, because you can't fall into the habits that, oh, normally when I play on synth or piano, like I go in these chord progressions. And so yeah, or like I wrote a song on an old 1950s suitcase organ recently, which completely influenced the tempo, and it went 3/4 and ended up sounding a bit magnetic fields. But it's just quite nice to experiment and play and just remember you enjoy the process. I'm really into sort of reconnecting with process at the moment and why we do stuff and why we enjoy doing it. And often that's not about the end product.
Yeah. So going and working with bands who are at the very beginning of their musical career, does that take you back to when you started as well? Does that do just that, remind you about that kind of initial thrill?
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I think especially in today's music age, like we're so obsessed with only sharing stuff when it's perfect now or complete. We've become, creating content is maybe taking priority over actually creating songs these days, you know. And so to work with people that are just like, I've just written this song, and they can barely play it, but they're like immediately like, let's share it, let's get it out there into the world, really reminds me of when I started, when that's just what you did, you know. It was very much, you didn't care. You didn't care that it was going to be documented and that you were going to be held to that standard for the rest of your career. You were allowed space to grow, you know.
Some of the best gigs I've ever been at are in the basements of pubs with people who it's only their second gig, if that, you know, and are playing away. And talking of playing gigs, are you going to be taking these other gigs coming up to play the album and play the tracks off the album?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So I'm really excited about, on Sunday the 12th of November, I'm doing an album launch at Mono in Glasgow, and it's during the afternoon because it's an all ages show, so that I could have, well, so that everyone could be welcome, really. And a band, one of the bands from Rigarts that I've been working with, are going to be supporting me, called The Chords. So that's pretty exciting. So that'll be really nice. The night before, on the 11th of November, is like evening over 18s party at Summer Hall in Edinburgh. And then I'm going down to Mac Arts on the 17th of November to do a co-headline show with Malka, which I think will just be really special because we've both self-produced our fourth albums, and they've come out at the same time. And I guess just from working together in Hen House and getting a better understanding of each other and becoming friends in that process, it's quite nice to do something together.
It does seem to me, I've not been down to Mac Arts, but I often see the gigs that they're putting on. It sounds like a really excellent place to go and see live music. Yeah,
the venue is great. Chris and all the team are absolutely brilliant. It's so beautiful. And actually, I mean, one of my album tracks, 1 week, was recorded there at Mac Arts in their studio space. So it's nice to include it in the sort of album launch shows.
And I was talking to a couple of writers recently who said, we were talking about publishers, and they felt that they were with the perfect independent publishers for them. And I wondered, is that how you feel about Olive Grove? Is this like the perfect record label?
Yeah, I mean, me and Lloyd started working together purely by accident, and in some ways I think his life would be easier if he didn't work with me. But no, I think we talk a lot about artist-friendly labels, and it's like, well, what does that actually mean? Because okay, you're going to put out an artist's record and you want it to be, in today's age, more in their favor in terms of rights and royalties and stuff like that. But in terms of the support that Lloyd's given me and the other artists on his label, like there's no pressure. There's a deep friendship there and understanding. There's a network between the other artists on the label, and he just wants what's best for us. You know, if it gets to that point where you're like, I'm having a bad week or I've got too much on, it's like, don't worry about it. Just we'll go at your pace. So there's a real support there that I haven't experienced elsewhere. And, you know, I think it's just the DIY labels in Scotland, we're really lucky that they exist, and there's so many amazing, great ones, and they all have their own ethos and some really cool stuff coming out. And it's such a like rich tapestry of community. It's really nice.
And I was wondering, can you enjoy it when an album has come out, or are you always thinking about the next thing, or how does it feel?
It's so weird because there's such a long wait from, like, you know, you write the songs, you plan the recording, how you're going to do that, you do the recording. My recording took place in the studio, but some of it was in home studios. And then you go into the mixing period, and then the mastering period, and then you've got to get all your artwork and your release schedule. So it's a long process. So, like, yeah, I mean, again, this is why I think Lloyd perhaps thinks I'm annoying to work with, because I'm already like, cool, I've got like 5 new songs, or, you know, and I've got these like 5 co-writes and all that. And so I'm thinking about like, but I guess maybe you're always thinking about what the next project is too. And well, sometimes I think I'm addicted to writing. So, but yeah, it's weird. It's like, it's almost like once the album comes out, and then it just has its own life now. It's no longer just mine. And so you have to kind of let it go a wee bit, and you can't be precious about it anymore. And it's going to go off and have a life of its own. And you don't know what that life will be. Like, you don't know what that life's going to be in like 50 years from now or something. It's just like, put it out in the world and off it goes, kind of thing.
And it just strikes me, we spoke on the podcast previously about the documentary that you're working on since yesterday. Has doing research on that fed into your music? All these bands that you've kind of been listening to and sometimes working with or interviewing?
Massively. And again, I think that was what spurred on the self-producing thing, was like all these bands, all these incredible women that I've spoken to and shared stories with, and we've laughed and cried. And it's not really that I'm interviewing them. We're just having, again, I'm going to say the word conversation, but conversation is so important. And, you know, I'm continuously hearing one after the other. It's just like, oh, we just did it. We just got up and did it. We just went in the recording studio and did it. I just picked up and played. We just got up on stage, and you're just like, okay, it's so inspiring, I think, to hear about people do that, hear about people that you recognize a bit of yourself in doing that. You know, like, I think it's good to have role models that you can relate to. And, you know, we talk about in the documentary a lot, like, one of the reasons for doing the documentary is that if you see someone on stage that looks like you, it normalizes you doing it too. So to have been having years of discussions with women about self-producing, writing all their songs, organizing their gigs, like doing it from scratch with this attitude of kind of, I'll not swear, zero cares. It's really inspiring. So then you do think, well, maybe I can do that too.
Yeah, and that is really interesting. It also sounds like you're got quite a lot on.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Well, Carla, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And this is Carla J Easton and Weekend Lovers.